Right, we're now screening.
Wonderful, thank you. And we're restarting the meeting, which has been adjourned to the Roger Croft room of the day of the Governance and Ethics Committee Monday the 16th of January. And we go to the notes I have in front of me. Firstly, I'd like to say that I'm Jeremy Cockham, the Vice Chair. Unfortunately, due to the absence at the moment, may change at any moment, of Jeff Camp, the Chairman, I am taking Chair of the actual committee today. So, good evening and welcome. I've already said who I am. Before we start, I would like to explain, for the benefit of members of the public who may be watching, that today's meeting is being held in both Zoom and with councillors present in this room. In addition to myself, other members of committee in attendance are Councillor Jeff Beck.
It was supposed to be Zoom.
Okay, myself, Rick Jones, Tony Linden, David Marsh, Jeff Mays, Andy Moore, and Councillor B. Locals.
Rick Jones, not there. Rick Jones. He said that.
All right, thank you. Reading from the script. Right, we also have a parish representative, do we?
Yep, David Southgate.
Good evening, sir. David Southgate from Shaw, Cummington, Donington Parish, and our new. Sorry. Right.
It's fine, it's fine.
He was trying to say something, but you don't mute.
Anyway, good evening. Sorry, first time. Right. Parish councillors are independent members and are permitted to speak at the meeting, but they are not permitted to vote on items. We have Joseph Holmes, Sarah Clark, Shannon Cole Slaughter, Holman Slaughter, Judith Gillespie, and Kathleen. Oh, is he?
Yes.
That's on. It's on Zoom.
Yeah, great.
Simon Carey as well.
Simon Carey's just joined us.
Simon Carey. Welcome, Simon Carey.
Simon Carey is our new independent person.
Right.
This is his first meeting of Governance and Ethics Committee.
And a very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Sadie Owen is in attendance as the clerk to meet the meeting, and Lizzie Reeves as the Zoom host. If we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we will leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit routes, which will be shown to us by the trained officers present. Please follow any instructions given by the trained officers present. The assembly point is the car park of the Dolphin Pub. Fine. We will move to item.
Councillor Beck has his hand raised.
Okay. Councillor Beck.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Did you have a question or a comment, sir?
Sorry.
You got a raised hand.
Oh, that was just basically because I hadn't got any connection for you.
Okay. Well, anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
Also, Councillor Marino can't hear something.
No, he
can.
Okay.
With that. Right. Okay. We go to item 1. Apologies. Have we any apologies?
Only from Councillor Bill Graham.
Thank you very much indeed. We move to item 2, and basically we're moving to the minutes, and I'm asking members if they're willing to accept the minutes of the previous meeting as a true and accurate record. And a proposer?
I'll propose.
Thank you.
Second.
And any more? Second. Thank you. Those for, please. Wonderful. Thank you very much. That's carried.
Mr. Chairman, there's just a question I have. Since this meeting, the meeting here, 26th of September, we had a special meeting in October, which was very largely in part 2. How do we get to see the minutes of that meeting?
That's a very good question.
When do they hear and in what guise and etc.
I'm sorry, I can't answer because I wasn't clerking, and I'm not sure if it was all part two. I'm not entirely sure that there will be full minutes.
Right.
Sarah, can you advise?
Sorry. What was the, sorry?
Okay, so there was a special meeting in October of this committee. It was entirely in part two. Well, obviously not entirely, but very largely in part two. So the minutes of that meeting don't appear in this pack, the public pack.
So yes, sorry.
How do we get to see those minutes?
So I think that, that the minutes of those, so it was a standard thing, and so it's a meeting to consider a complaint that had been received. So the minutes will be a kind of an abridged record. They should be published on the website. And actually, I will take it away to see where they are in terms of decision notices, etc. have gone out on the back of that, but I've not seen them, so I can't give you an immediate response. But
So the minutes, it's just a summary, a part one summary.
it will be. So, it will almost the part 2 minutes would almost be to say that an item was considered and determined. There won't really be any detail because obviously it was all in part 2.
Sure. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Linden.
Thanks, Chairman. It's I take it we have another meeting of governance and ethics prior to the May elections, so we can sort that out, can't we? We have another meeting in March, don't we?
Yes. So
We can bring it to that next meeting.
Yeah.
Although we may be having an extraordinary meeting to confirm the constitutional update from the notes of those meetings. It would be very nice. I know that some members have put a lot of time and hard work into those, and we'll be very gratified to see them up here.
So, Chairman, so following that, would that be a special meeting of council?
no. So no. I think that the minutes for the part 2 meeting will come to a future meeting of this committee. So
Normal regular committee.
yes. So
I shouldn't have confused you.
no. Well, so I think that's fine. So I think that in terms of the minutes, and then we will get to the forward plan in a moment. And I think then if we want to discuss whether and just in terms of any additional meetings that may be required.
I'm ahead of myself, so
Fine.
wonderful. Do we have declarations of interest? Have we received any? Are you asking that on item 3 or?
Yes, my usual. I'm on the local government pension scheme for councillors until it got stopped by the government. So I don't think this is a pecuniary interest or what we're discussing. So I'll just carry on, but I just wanted to mention that there is a declaration, but it won't affect this item. And I've also consulted the monitoring officer.
Wonderful, thank you. Any others?
No others.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, if we go to item 4, forward plan, you ask, do we have any amendments that they would like to make to the forward plan?
Just one thing for everyone to note, to the June meeting 2023 and the provisional plan, there's an additional item which is the draft audit plan. It's been added to it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, just for clarification, is this the forward plan of our meetings or the forward plan of the audit plan? Then what's this?
It's the plan of your meetings, so it's like sort of,
and these are the different.
that's the meeting timetable, yeah.
So for the 20 March meeting, we've got 3 topics to consider. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we've just been told that there'll be a constitutional update.
Yes,
Which is on page
I
12.
think that's likely to need a special meeting of G&E because the intention is to bring this sort of phase 2 to council in March. So we're not quite ready with phase 2 at this point, and the 20th of March meeting will be too late for the March council meetings. Right. So I think that the plan will be to ask the chairman of G&E to convene a special meeting, so that those updates can make their way to council in March. And as I said earlier, hopefully they wouldn't be controversial given that we've got a kind of cross-party working group looking at the constitution update. So hopefully they will be in a form agreed by members, but it needs to come through this committee en route to council.
Fine.
Chairman, so on this, we've also got phase one, which we discussed, but that hasn't been approved yet. Because we've got two constitutional updates.
No, I think you're looking at the within the forward plan for next year. So that's a provisional forward plan, because and not to kind of worry members of the task group, that the review of the constitution is something that should be done on an ongoing basis. So what we have done is put into the forward plan scheduled. So if there are legislative changes, etc., in the course of the year that we need to change the constitution, that we've got that in our programme of works in effect for the next year. So that is the going back to business as usual, hopefully, in terms of constitution updates. So it's the maintenance, if you like, the ongoing maintenance of the constitution on a rolling basis.
So we're not going to discuss the constitution this March this year.
No, it is not at this point. So and we will see where we get to. It is not planned at this point. At this point, we're talking about bringing phase two to a meeting in an extraordinary meeting, so that can go to council in March.
This March or next March?
Yes, this March. So it will go to the 2nd March council meeting. So it won't be an extraordinary council meeting, but it needs to come to G&E first.
Right. Good.
We're happy.
I'm happy.
Good. That's the main thing. That's the local.
Sorry, coming back to my question about, so who determines or who plans the work? Who plans the forward plan? So we've got an item in here, for example, external audit fee, audit plan and fee. Who decides what goes in the plan?
The officers.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So it's officers that sort of determine that, but that's determined through lots of, certainly this committee, items within the committee's terms of reference,
Right.
that it has to items of business that it's required to look at. So things like the external auditors' reports, internal audit papers from Julie, risk management and treasury management. So things that are within the terms of reference within the committee come through that are relevant. And there's some things like external audit, for instance, which is statutory.
Yeah.
We have to do it. This committee is our audit committee, including those who are charged with governance. So it's the committee that's been determined by council through its terms of reference to have these certain items.
So this is a proposal.
Well, it's just to be noted, really. It's self-generating work that comes up through the system to us.
I know, I'm just trying to understand the process that determines what comes into the plan and what input, who has what input into what goes into the plan.
Well, the officers and the departments, but there's a few you want.
Yes, which is what you explained that. So there's a process to go through and then it comes here for us to review it and accept it.
Yeah, and
So we can turn it down if we want.
you can. There's
For example.
some things you could say. I don't want to do anything with treasury management. Thanks very much. However, in your terms of reference, the council has said you as a committee need to be looking at treasury management. It's perhaps more pertinent where there might be other things you want to see on the agenda. So you think, well, treasury management is very exciting. We want to, see a quarterly. Sorry, Shannon. We want to see a quarterly report on treasury management because we're so interested in say, well, one of these reports might come up and you say, actually, we want to have a sort of deeper look at that area. There seems to be recurrent things to look at there.
Because when I look at this work plan, the first one is to inform, the next one is review, and the next one is an update. So I question the value. If you're just informing us or you're just noting it, then what is the value of the work that we're doing?
Okay, I said 3, Chairman, so thank you very much. Councillor, item 2 actually of the forward plan may interest you from specifically on this question because CIPFA, so Chartered Institute of Finance and Accountancy, they are looking at the terms and conditions of audit committees And so a report will be so it's a sneak preview tonight. A report will be coming through for the committee to do a self-assessment against what they're saying is
I get that.
but that then might answer some of your questions around actually what should we as a committee be looking at, because in SIPA's view, all of what you should do should actually be advisory. So perhaps go against some of your thoughts. So that might be an interesting thing, because that's your point, is actually, are we just doing advisory stuff?
Absolutely. That's where I'm going. Because if I'm going to travel an hour, I'm not just going to come here and sit there and note. I mean, there must be something that we contribute to the debate.
We're here to query. I mean, we have the overarching responsibility of governments to overlook the papers.
Chairman, it doesn't say that. It says that to inform. So you can debate as much as you like, but we're informed. That's the end of it. Can we input into that? So therefore, I would question the use of the word inform and update.
Okay, so there's a few, if you go on to the next one, which of course we need to populate, but the annual governance statement that is for you to approve. And similarly, the annual monitoring officer report is a report to review and approve for it to go through to full council.
The audit, sorry, Jason, the audit plan is as well, that's to approve as well.
Yeah, and the financial statements are to approve as well. So there are some things in there which council have delegated to this committee around internal audit strategy, external audit financial statements, and the annual governance statement.
And if you see something in there that you don't like, now's the time that you bring it up.
Yeah, that's why.
No,
not these words.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
quite right to bring it up.
Yeah, and we also do this on a regular basis on the Fire Authority on audit and governance.
Yeah, now this is another meeting. That will come up again in that meeting for sure. So, because I hear what you're saying. So there's certain items that have been delegated to this committee, and that's what we can deliberate on. Everything else that we look at, it's really for advice, for advisory. You put it really just to advise
and to question.
Sorry, it's also the committee is like the filter, or you're looking at the detail of it to sort of say yes, you agree, or whatever's in that paper before it goes elsewhere. It's that at the forum.
Yeah, but that is not what it doesn't say filter, it doesn't say query, it just says we're being informed.
But it's that the challenges at this level, if it's going somewhere else for approval, they will take what's been discussed and the minutes of G&E as part of that.
So let me drill down a bit. Maybe so if you inform of the external audit fee and the figures, whatever it is, and we have an issue with it, is what can we do about it?
Okay, so that one, you could turn to the external auditor to say this is absolutely outrageous, we refuse to pay this. At that point, then you might task myself or Shannon to go away and argue more with external.
Then that word inform that word inform doesn't convey that action. So maybe it's the word inform that we need to, because there is an action. If there's something we don't like here, for example, we can throw it out or ask for what to be done.
It depends on well, the informing that we do, you might well say that's excellent. Thank you very much.
My take is that they've informed us, and then I'll ask them questions about what they've informed me about. And if I don't like something, then I continue and say, well, no, sorry, but I've been around the block on pension funds and things like this, and I didn't like the reports we were getting, and we asked for it to come back and give us more information. If you see here in the papers something that you don't understand, or you disagree with, or you think needs further investigation, that's why we're here today.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about this spirit.
It's semantics, yeah, but
it's not semantics, because in a strict boardroom, right? If the action on the board members is to be informed, once you're informed, that's the end of it. You can only be informed. You cannot do anything else. But here, you can be informed or you can query. So we need to be very clear on the action on us, because these are public records. And somewhere down the line, no one's going to be necessarily privy to this debate that we have.
Well,
they will just,
recorded and there will be minutes.
5 years down the line, or how many years down the line. So, I mean, if there's an approval that's required of us in this, If there's an action required of us in this, then that action needs to be part of the note.
We'll take that away.
Okay.
And, we'll discuss this. It's a fair point. What I read from it is slightly different from you.
Yeah.
But we maybe need to make it more clear.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. So, on that basis, this is to be noted.
Yes.
Except that it's missing the additional special meeting that we're
Yes.
now anticipating, but.
That's my fault. I was getting excited about thinking the Constitution was coming back, and it is in process in
I
mechanism.
think it was to note that that's likely to come, but we haven't got a date yet because we've not quite got to the point where we can ask the chairman to assign a date because we're ready. So
I think we can minute that the fact that we are now looking to do this
Yeah.
as another. So we're adding to these informed or noted conditions. Yeah. Companies and councils somewhat different language on different things.
Yeah, it's the same concept.
Yeah.
Boardroom.
And its interpretation. Wonderful. Okay, we've moved from item 4, has been noted, to item 5, the internal audit update. Page 13. You.
So this report is my usual quarterly update committee for quarter 2 of the year. And the key points to note are laid out in is 5.2, where I'm saying for this reporting period, there's no completed audits that were given less than a satisfactory opinion. So there's no issues of concern. I would highlight the committee for that completed work. We carried out one advisory review, but that we didn't give an opinion for that, and there was no follow-ups with any completed during the period. The one thing to mention to committee is that out of the team of 5, we've had a vacancy since early June this year, and that's obviously impacting on the level of work we've been able to do on the plan. But I'm mentioning on 5.5 of my report that we have a performance target of 80% of the audit plan for the year. And I've projected at the end of quarter 2 that we're on target of 73%. And that's with 4 people. So that's pretty good going. And if I then calculate it for the people in post, how productive we're being, it's approximately 86%. So it's looking reasonably healthy to say that we've been down 1 person since early June. We've tried to recruit to the vacancy twice unsuccessfully, and I'm now reconsidering what I'm going to do with that post. It's a senior auditor post, and what I think I'm going to do is look at a career grade, an auditor to a senior, and see if we can train somebody ourselves.
That would be an excellent idea. Annie?
Yeah, so so what, that be an internal or an external?
We'll do both at the same time. So yeah, because it will be somebody that hasn't got the experience. Yeah, it could be somebody.
But obviously, when they're doing the training, obviously that means the work that you'll be doing and your team will do will obviously be less because you take a certain time to train. I mean, how long are we talking about?
It's about 20%. Potentially, it is very hands-on on the job training, and that's why we don't. It's to get somebody that's already got that experience.
What are we talking about for training then?
20% of mine or my team's time.
All right, but how long will that take?
To get an experienced auditor, it's a minimum 18 months, 2 years, and it depends on the capability of the person. So it is a steep learning curve, and it does take quite a long time. So you don't want to let people go and give opinions on something when they don't know what they're doing.
Exactly, and of course the cost of agencies as well, which we want to avoid.
We have looked at that, and it's expensive. The 73% where we're at the moment is good for this year. As long as we can try and recruit somebody or have a plan for next financial year, that would be good. And the other thing that was, so that's the key highlights of what I wanted to mention to committee. And then the detailed work is set out. Appendix A is the completed work. Appendix B is the list of work in progress, which is getting quite lengthy. And the Appendix C is an update on the anti-fraud work plan.
Thank you. Simon Perry, do you have a query, question, or Comment?
Yes, just a quick, just a curiosity one. You mentioned in the report about your KPI target to achieve 80% of the audit plan. Any reason why that's not 100%?
Good question. 100% is not achievable because each audit has planned days allocated to it and their guesstimates. So it depends what else is going on in that area. That would be constantly revising figures up and down. So it's taking allowance and flexibility. I benchmark the 80%, or I benchmark how many days that we're working to, and it seems reasonable compared to the local authorities. Some authorities don't work on percentage; they work on number of audits. So there's different ways of benchmarking it, but the number of productive days I work to per auditor when I put the plan together is roughly what other colleagues are working to. So yeah, there's nothing set in stone to say it should be 80%. 100% would not be achievable. It would be unrealistic. It would be unrealistic.
Yeah. Is it safe to say are the team of 5 who are now 4? Are they working on full time on internal audits? Yes.
There's one post that is 0.8, but the rest are full time. But yes, they're just purely working on an audit team. Although saying that, when you say it's assurance work, we also do investigations. So if a fraud investigation came up, we would do that in the council. I also get involved in HR investigations, so grievances and disciplinaries as well. But I count that as chargeable as time towards the 80%. It is if the auditors go over their time budget, that's not counted, and that does happen. Sickness absence, so there's other things that would impact on us trying to achieve the 100%.
Thank you.
I hope that suffices. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 queries. Where in the current work sheet, it says electoral services financial processes draft report issued. Does that have to be revisited at all in the wake of the current voter ID legislation, which seems to be putting a great extra workload on the electoral services department and on its budget? Are the processes robust enough to cope with that kind of sudden thing being landed in their lap?
We didn't cover that as part of the scope. There was quite a restricted scope on certain areas. It's a very detailed financial processes that we looked at rather than a wider. We didn't look at the actual voting side of things. We've done that previously. That wasn't covered this year. So the ID and how that's going to work, if we look at the voting side, we'd cover it then. But this is purely the financial processes. And it didn't even cover the budget monitoring side. It was a day-to-day financial processes linked into a previous bit of work that we did.
Does that mean that what you call the voting processes could fall within scope of a future audit? So that, for example, an audit could be carried out into the effect of the voter ID legislation on the turnout in the election, on the workload, as I mentioned, on the cost of it, etc. So that could be
It could, if that's something that committee, if they are in what point it is worthwhile to look at. That's more like a PFM review, the value from the cost of it. We could look at that. It would be a case of what benefit is there, what the risk associated with it.
And to echo the points that were made earlier, that would be something that we could decide. The committee could say, we would like an audit done on this.
You could put forward a case, and I suppose compared with everything else that's going to be in the audit plan, I would consider it. And if I thought it was a low risk compared to something else, we'd have a discussion about it. But if members felt strongly about it, then that would be your decision to make. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. And then on the other thing, completely related to that. So could you explain exactly what testing means? So in particular, in relation to the environment strategy delivery plan, I mean, what exactly are you testing there? Looking at the strategy and saying, is it being delivered? Is it as basic as that?
The wording of the stages is because each piece of assurance audit work has defined stages. It's got background, which is terms of reference, scoping. Then it's the testing phase. And that's where we decide we'll look for compliance, we look at the controls. And the testing would depend what it is for the environment strategy. We will look at, is there a strategy? Does it follow good practice? Have we defined how we're going to deliver it? Is there a delivery plan? And are we reporting on progress? So it would depend on scoping. But the testing is we're looking at the terms of reference, how we'll scope the review, and the testing is we're doing the detailed work, and that is the chunky bit of work during the testing phase.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Councillor Locker.
Thank you, Chairman. Two comments. First one is just to get an understanding of what your challenge is with the recruitment of this person, of this potential senior auditor, and whether or not, because I'm aware sometimes it happens that some of the accounting firms can second people who are looking for this kind of experience. So really just trying to understand the reach of the recruitment effort and anything else we can do.
This is more a personnel matter than need to look at the.
No, there's an issue that's affecting the work that they do.
And what's the risk of not having somebody?
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering, what the work that's been done. What's the issue there? Because it seems to be on for quite a while. And then the second thing then really is about work. And I'm glad you kind of got into that, trying to understand really how, I don't know how you come about this, because I look at some of these things and I have certain issues in my head, which I think are probably more significant. For example, like PFI contracts and whether or not it extends or it's out of scope.
You want to see what the audit plan looks like. I draft an audit plan that covers a 3-year period, and it shows when it's last reviewed. So I identify every council that I think is worth, is a risk associated to achieving it, whether it's financial risk, reputational risk. I identify all the areas, I risk assess it, and then I determine what frequency it needs to be covered. Say the waste PFI we covered last year, but whatever audit we do is we define a scope, and we can't look at absolutely everything. Otherwise, we could be there months and months and months.
It's something process.
So we look at what we think the key risks are, and sometimes the key risk, the emphasis could change because it's such a large area. We can only cover one bit of it. But I identify the key risks, and I identify when it's last reviewed in the audit plan, which will be coming to committee in June, which should give members a better idea.
Okay.
Just to answer the question.
That does.
Right. Are there any other further comments or questions? Because now, after that thorough discussion from councillors, which is what, quite right, this is what it's about, is questioning and probing into the actual substance. David, okay.
Hello. Just to understand, what is the target time from the end of an audit to having an issued report? Because looking here, there seems to be quite a lot left over from the previous audit plan year that haven't yet been issued. And I wonder if there's actually an internal benchmark of what that should be and whether that's something that the audit team might audit themselves on.
We aim for, or when we issue the terms of reference, we allow for a quarter to try and get a draft report out. There are lots of factors of where we can't achieve that, not all of it down to us. If the auditee does not engage and does not provide us with information, we cannot progress. So we often come across where we need to pick another auditor and put one on hold until we get the information. We also, if we do because we're a small team of 4, 5, if we're carrying out an investigation, and depending how large that is and who's involved in it, if any audit work, assurance work that person's doing has to be put on hold. So it varies. We can tighten up in the team. It was on my quality list of actions that I came to committee with to say that that's one area that we need to improve. So I have identified that with committee, and it has improved over the last year, because the list of ones carried forward was longer in the previous years. So it has improved, but it was on a target to improve it again for this year. So it's a valid point. It's better than it was. Some of it's down to us, but it's also down to engagement from auditors. And I would like to highlight that one of the audit groups that I'm part of, is the Southern Counties Audit Group. And I queried this with them recently when we had a meeting. Are they having issues with engagement or delays in audit work? And it seems to be, it's happening sort of a national issue to a degree. And I think it's people being very busy, impact of COVID, and also audit teams are being stretched because they can't recruit. Same issue that I'm having, they can't recruit, so that any audit work, if somebody's left, or that's causing delays as well. Not making excuses, we can improve, but it's not all down to me to be able to manage that. Some of it's down to what's happening in the council.
That your question?
So I just wondered whether that would be a measure for you to have as a metric in terms of how many of those audits you achieve within the desired timeframe.
We could, but if I was then having to give you an explanation every time for when it didn't, there would be a long, you would have lots of information. I could do that. I could say it's down to us and we didn't progress one, or if you don't get the information timely, you then need to pick up another bit of work. And if you're picking that other bit of work, it's juggling, otherwise they'll all be delayed. It's prioritising. So I could do that and I could give you explanations, but you could get an awful lot of detail to be able to explain the situation behind those dates. But I could.
I guess as a metric, I'd be looking for less of a explanation of each one, but an overall percentage done within the allotted window. So if you do a rolling 12 month and look at in that 12-month period how many were actually done within the quarter allotted target, that would give you a metric as to whether things are getting better or worse or staying the same.
But it's whether what's acceptable. It would vary depending on what we're working on, to which services and the level of engagement. So it would vary, but with looking at just a percentage without that supporting information wouldn't give the context. I could try it and see what it comes out as.
Oh, maybe we can have a look at this and bring back a proposal to the next meeting. Yes, yeah. Would that be satisfactory?
Yeah, I think it comes from you can't manage what you don't measure. Yeah, so
yeah,
depends how much detail you go into, doesn't it? And can you, if you get too much detail, can you actually manage that? Can be the opposite direction. We're here to as an overview, but yes, if members want to drill down on particular points, I agree. That's what we need to do. But how much? I mean, here we already have how many pages? 90 odd pages of information in front of us. How much more information in terms of tables and graphs and information would you require? And I think that's what we asked.
I guess my measure would be a percentage for that previous 12 months.
So an overview.
Yeah.
Of that. Well, let the officer take that away and maybe come back and
all I'll say is that the performance target that we have, there will be a very low proportion that are meeting that, and lots of reasons. So for me to, it won't be meaningful without me actually giving explanations on every single one. But I'll look at it.
Okay, come back. So, I mean, obviously, there's what is actually feasible with the amount of staff that you actually have to do. But what it is up to us to do is prioritize what we would like the officers to do, because they can't do everything at all times, and especially when they're short-staffed. That's not an excuse, but certainly it must be something to be taken in consideration. So we'll get asked for a report on what may be possible and look and delve into it in more detail further. Thank you. Right, on that basis, I feel fairly comfortable to go into the proposal, which is members note the outcome of the audit work, because I think we've drilled into it and had a very, very good discussion. So as Chair, I would note the outcome of the audit work. If that's fine with the rest of the committee. Thank you. So we now move on to item 6, the year-end preparations. And Shannon Collins. There.
Thank you.
For you to present.
This is the preparation report for the 22-23 close down of our accounts. Members are asked to approve the accounting policies that inform this close down, and they are detailed in Appendix A of this report. There are no material changes to these policies. They are pretty much in line with all the accounting policies that have been applied in prior years. I will draw your attention as well, and this is to note, to give you context, that we currently have our 2021 and 21-22 accounts still open. They have not been signed off by our external auditors. The 2021 accounts are still open due to a national issue around infrastructure accounting. A statutory override to try and address this issue is now in place, and subsequent to the production of this report, we have reproduced the accounts taking into account the override, and these are now with our external auditors for review. And our external auditors have now started in the last week the audit of the 21-22 accounts, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. I'd like to start as chair of the meeting to say I'm very, very unhappy about this circumstance that we do not have these audits signed off in 2021. Personally, I find it unacceptable, and I've basically put that around for councillors to see what their views may be. Tony.
Thanks, Shem. And also there is the delay in the Berkshire pension scheme, which is an ongoing issue, which obviously I deal with on the Fire Authority on audit and governance, so as well as Councillor Loper. So, but yeah, some of these delays are going to be there, and this obviously compounds it because it's outside our control on both points.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or points? Because I would just like to say that I, as chairman of the meeting, would ask that the officers send a stern letter to the auditor and get from them a date as to when they can expect, with all haste, not haste, haste is the wrong word, promptness to actually get these signed. It's not acceptable.
But Chairman, it's not just our auditor, it's also the auditor of the Berkshire pension.
Okay, well, that,
different audit.
Yes, but I'm referring to our case. Yeah.
And it's the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, it is causing delay.
Well, that's for the pension schemes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just a comment really about this. Obviously, there's been some national issue that's just cascaded down. Does this? I don't recall that happening in previous years. Is that something that does happen from time to time? Presumably, therefore, almost no councils have got their 2021 audits signed off.
Issues can present during the course of audits. This was a brand new one for the financial year 2021 relating to infrastructure accounting. It had not previously come up, and our external auditors and nationally external auditors were happily signing off on the basis of how infrastructure account assets were accounted for. During the course of the 2021 audits, an issue became around the gross disclosure of the valuations of these assets, which then resulted in a number of audit firms refusing to sign off the accounts. Hence, government had to intervene and put a statutory override in place on this particular issue. Now, new issues can come up all the time.
So thank you, Chairman. So just to add to that, if the issues around the pension fund had been signed off sooner, our accounts probably would have been approved by Grant Thornton before the national issue around infrastructure assets came up. And just to give some context, for 2020-21, only 9% of audits had an opinion by their auditors given on the date that they were due to. And even for 2021-22, where our audit is only just starting, the deadline for the auditors to complete that was the 30th of November, of which only 12% of auditors nationally have met. So there is a much more wide-scale issue with external audit in local government at the moment.
And have they said why?
A whole variety of reasons. COVID, I think, being top of that, but also so the Financial Reporting Council putting in different sort of regulatory processes that the auditors feel they have to comply with. Recruitment, you mentioned recruitment and retention here, recruitment and retention issues for the external auditors as well. I've probably got some other thoughts, but I think
There's also the fees as well that we've had some problems with, and we go to a larger body for that, because otherwise we wouldn't do it on personal structure.
That's what look at.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it just seems to be very careful with my choice of words here.
Excuse me, Chair.
A global issue regarding.
Just bow out of this meeting on behalf of Simon. He's had to leave the room. He's feeling really unwell.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, there's a global issue regarding audits of councils, if you like, because there's no penalty for not doing it. Unlike in the private sector, if you don't submit your accounts, if your accounts are not audited on time, there's a fine. You're exempted. You have to pay. You can be exempted. That's not the right. Excluded from certain things. So it just seems to be a pattern. Accounts get delayed, and if you don't have signed audited accounts, I mean, a figure of 9% just speaks volumes. I mean, if it's 9%. What's the point of even doing it if it's not needed, if it doesn't make any difference? But that's a different discussion.
I think it's a legal requirement.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, I think linked to
But
that,
it's not.
just with my sort of section 151 on, it does not feel satisfactory that you as members are heading into approving the 2023, or being asked to approve the 2023-24 budget in just over a month's time, and our accounts going back to the 2020-21 financial year not being signed off. Now, as a committee, you have seen their draft audit report, which doesn't raise any, there's millions of pounds have gone missing or anything. So you've got some assurance there. 21-22 hasn't started yet, and we've produced our accounts on time, so if people want to go and look at them, they can, and they've had kind of over 6 months to. But also with that audit opinion, there's also a view on value for money as well, which again, members haven't seen when they're thinking of sort of setting the budget in light of all relevant information.
Thank you. And I'm like you, I'm a commercial businessman, and I think it's unacceptable that these people just say, "Oh, no, we can't, we're too busy, we haven't got enough staff." And at the very least, I think we as a committee ask the question, when will we get them? And not just sit here quietly accepting this, because they are being paid significant amounts of agreed contract money, and it's our right to know. So I'm equally dissatisfied. Any further questions or points on that item? No, in that case, I think what we're asked to do is note the report. So we note the report. And maybe we can liven this up a little bit with some more exciting words. Okay, thank you. So we move to item 7.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, have I read 2.1 in the report? Am I in the right place? Which was to approve the accounting policies.
Pages are.
Good question. 29?
Yeah, sure. Not quite right.
25 or 29, depending on which one you're looking at. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
What's your luck?
I know it says that there is a recommendation to approve, so it's the policies that are in the appendix.
So we're recommending the policies in the appendix.
So yeah,
Which was covered in the briefing.
Yes. So we need to have a vote on that, don't we?
Proposer, a seconder, and then a vote on that. If assuming there is a proposer and a seconder.
Feels like I'd better propose. I was the one.
Thank you, Councillor Moore, for bringing it to our attention.
Can I second it? Sure.
Yes, thank you. And those 4, please. And again, that's carried in unanimously. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Get my training wheels off soon. Right, okay, we move to item 7.
Before we got the chairman, there was something about, and it's highlighted, the book on page 42. I meant to raise that. It's just got the figures blank.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's because at the moment we don't know those figures. So once we get to the end of the financial year and we're given the figures for 2023-24, we'll include them in the very final accounting policies which go into the financial statements for 2022-23.
So should we add some comment to that then?
I think you put an attached note to it. Yes, I think that's a very good point. Thank you. That's what you're here for. Okay, you're having that influence on the omissions. So we have that done. Now, if the members don't want to raise anything else, we go to item 7 on the financial year mid-year Treasury report. Shannon, I believe.
It is, thank you. This is our midterm Treasury report. It says the position of the Treasury function as at the end of September 22. Key point, it is a to note report. There are no recommendations in here. The key note to bring your attention to is due to the economic conditions and raising interest rates, we have followed borrowing strategies of short-term borrowing versus entering into more long-term borrowing in order to keep costs down. Therefore, we have reducing PWLB liabilities. We held at the end of September about £44 million in investments. This is separate to our investment and commercial property portfolios, which are detailed in the report as well and are held at 72.5 million.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions or comments, please? The master.
This may be for Mr. Holmes rather than for Shannon, but this Appendix C, directly owned property, there are those of us who are sceptical about this whole venture, as you're aware. And I'm just wondering, I know that because of in a nutshell, how do you reckon these are performing? Sorry, I didn't mean to challenge anyone else's authority, but it's something that I asked Joe to the time this year. So
well, thank you very much. I'm sure Shannon hopefully give a similar answer as well. But I suppose from an income point of view, they're holding up well. So we're into the behind 90% in the amount of income collected against these. It makes a return, I think, previous financial year of just below £1 million a year, a tiny bit higher in the current financial year as everything is let. So from that sort of purely financial point of view, has performed pretty recently. You see the capital value fluctuates depending on the sort of year of valuation. So they dropped down a bit in the first, after a couple of years, they came back up in value again. So from a capital value point of view, they're pretty similar to the amount that the council bought them. The council bought them for the revenue that sort of comes off these at the time of sale. It's held up pretty well. But all of them are performing pretty close to where we expected them to when the council originally undertook that borrowing. So sort of making a return is pretty good.
Were it to be decided to sell them at some point, is that figure 58, just under 59 million? Is that feasible? Could they fetch that on the current market if they were put on the open market for sale at the moment?
Yeah, so as part of the financial statements, every single year we have investment properties valued annually. So lots of other assets get, so school, for example, get valued every 5 years. The investment properties do so every single year. So that's the market value. Now, of course, underlying this, you don't know what sort of buyers are out there. There could be, I don't know, a buyer who loves having Lloyds banked and so may well pay you a premium because they're trying to collect as many Lloyds banks as possible. So you've got all of that kind of uncertainty around what may be happening in that local area any one time, which may well affect the value one way or the other. Someone might have a site adjoining this, and it would offer them a great regeneration opportunity. Who knows? But they get valued every year at the market value, so that is as close as possible as the value it determines.
And of course, you can, if you sell it, then there's a limit to what you can actually do with a capital receipt.
Yes, yeah. So we'll into this is all capital. So yeah, so capital receipt can only be used for for capital purposes, except where we have the flexibility to use that capital receipt for transformation activity, for example.
But we do get a revenue of £1 million, which we can offset against our spending. So at the moment, because we have this capital.
Yes, yeah. If you sold all of these, you'd have a capital receipt of just over £60 million, but you wouldn't be getting the
revenues for capital.
And what we can't do is, if we want to access the Public Works Loans Board still, we couldn't then use that money to go off and then buy some other assets which were primarily used for investment
for the property.
Yes, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Just to go back on that, most of these were funded by a Public Works Loan Board. So have we not got to pay that back at some point? So actually, if the point here is selling them and paying off the loan, because we're paying interest on the loan.
Yeah. So if you did, so if we did decide, the council decided, right, sell these assets, you'd have to watch for it being a fire sale and therefore people trying to get down. But say we did that and it was all fine and it sort of fetched this value. Because we've already taken out the borrowing for these, you would have a premium you'd have to pay for repaying that borrowing. However, in another report which read through from Shannon that come through to Budget Council, we have a long-term borrowing need. So in effect, what we would do is use that borrowing that we'd use to this to then utilise for school maintenance, say, or sort of roads, etc. So, but there is that premium hit that you would have for paying off debt early. You just have to watch that.
Are those fixed rate interests? Or?
Yeah, so we pay them out on an annuity basis. Was it either annuity or maturity? But it's fixed rate, so it's fixed rate as at the time they're taken out, which I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well,
the time they were taken out, it would have been a much lower rate.
Yes, this is what I was just saying. Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 comments. The first one, I think you've explained it in terms of the rising interest rates. You're switching from long-term, if you like, to short-term investments because there's an advantage to that. And looking at page 57, 7.2, you can see that the forecast interest income to 31st of March is 677 million, is thousands against what was budgeted for 118. So there's a surplus in there. Just thinking out loud, is that providing any advantages? Is that feeding through into lower numbers somewhere else? And then the second one is on 7.3, and I really just would like to understand what this is saying, because you talk about compliance with the authorized limit and operational boundary, but I don't understand what it's saying. So maybe you can just explain. Maybe it's just me.
I don't know. So, which of the officers would like to take that one?
I'm happy to take that one. What happens as part of our KPIs on Treasury that we have to report on, and we set them as part of the investment and borrowing strategy, is that we have an authorised limit that we can actually borrow to. It's in the maximum limit and an operational boundary that we can take loans out to. And the idea is that we do not exceed those boundaries, because if we exceeded those boundaries, we'd basically not be complying with our KPIs. So when we set our investment and borrowing strategy, we set out limits of required capital financing and boundaries we think are acceptable that the council can afford, so limits that are sustainable. So all this is saying is basically we are operating within those borrowing limits currently, but I can put more detail around that in future reports to make that clear.
Following that,
yeah, just to add on to what Sam was saying, so and that operational boundary that's set at full council. So again, so local, actually, what do you approve? What full council? That's one of the things that you approve. And so the purpose there is, you look at those budget papers in the round, which says we spend X% of our revenue budget on financing debt. And that gives you an operational boundary of X £100 million. And Shannon's point, that is kind of what is affordable within all of those papers. You could at full council turn around and say, no, we want to set aside £5 billion of borrowing to do whatever you want to do with that £5 billion. And then we'd have to adjust all of the other budget papers to reflect that and kind of show that financial impact. But that's the purpose, so that if during the year Shannon and I went off and borrowed £5 billion and it wasn't in line with these limits, that's suddenly going to show an absolutely massive financial pressure.
Okay, so sorry,
Please carry on, yeah.
just so I can get that right in my head. So the authorized limit for borrowing is 852.7 and 7.3. That's the upper limit. Okay, and the operational boundary is what you set yourselves internally.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments or observations? Fine, I think, is that just to be noted or?
Yeah.
Just for this? Okay, so word noted. Thank you very much indeed. So we now move on to item 8, which is exclusion of press and public.
So, Vice Chair.
Is that seconded?
Yeah.
And that's 4. And